For years, he raised the girl like an adoptive father. But what she told the judge during the adoption hearing shocked everyone and left everyone speechless. Stephen had always been a man of simple habits and a quiet heart. He lived alone in a small house behind the mechanic shop where he had worked for years. The house was modest, furnished with old furniture and few personal belongings, reflecting the life without excesses that he led. His routine was repetitive and solitary. He woke up early, drank strong coffee, put on the same clothes as always, and went straight to work. At the shop, he was known for his dedication and the care he gave to the few loyal customers who trusted his work. He spoke little, and when he did, every word seemed measured before it was said. His way of speaking was slow, as if he wasn't in a hurry to be understood. Stephen's days were long, spent among tools, grease, and engines. The nights were filled only by the sound of the television, which he left on more to keep the silence away than out of interest in any program. He had no wife, never had children, and didn't keep close friendships. The phone rarely rang, and visits were almost non-existent. His only family connection was with Karen, his older sister. But even with her, the contact was distant. Since they were young, they had taken different paths. Karen was a teacher, a woman with rigid opinions and inflexible morality. She always had ready answers for everything and made a point of showing she was right. Stephen was the opposite, a practical man who preferred to solve things with actions, without long speeches or unnecessary explanations. That winter seemed longer and harsher than previous ones. Mornings started with damp ground, and the air felt heavy, carrying a cold that didn't go away even with hot coffee. It was one of those mornings, just after opening the shop's door, that Stephen noticed something strange among the cardboard boxes stacked near the back trash bin. He stopped for a moment, frowned, and took cautious steps toward the pile of boxes. When he moved one aside, he saw the girl. Small, knees drawn up to her chest, wearing torn and dirty clothes. Her face was smudged with dirt and dried tears. Her eyes, frightened and wary, met his with a mix of fear and exhaustion. "Hey, are you okay?" Stephen murmured softly, unsure how to approach. The girl didn't answer. She just hugged her knees tighter and shook her head slightly, as if asking him to leave. Stephen took a deep breath. He stood there for a few seconds, trying to think about what to do. He wasn't one to meddle in others' lives, but he also couldn't just turn his back. He looked around, checked if anyone else was nearby. Nothing. Just the sharp silence of that cold morning. Without saying more, he took off the old coat he was wearing and held it out toward her. "Come on, it's really cold out here," Stephen said, his tone trying to be firm but gentle at the same time. She hesitated, but after a few seconds, stretched out her thin arms and took the coat. Stephen crouched down and carefully helped her up. The girl wobbled a little, looking weak, with bare, dirty feet. When they got to the house, Stephen went straight to the bathroom. He turned on the hot water and then went back to the door. "You need a bath. It'll do you good," he said, trying to sound natural, as if this were a usual situation. The girl stood still in the doorway, looking at the floor, not moving. "What's your name?" Stephen asked while placing a clean towel on the back of a chair. The answer came in a faint voice, almost inaudible. "Stephanie." "All right, Stephanie. I'm Stephen. I'll leave the door ajar. If you need anything, just call me." While she bathed, Stephen prepared something simple to eat. He warmed up some soup he had in the fridge and set out a few crackers. When she came out, he put the food on the table. "Eat, it's warm." Stephanie sat down in silence. Her hands trembled as she held the spoon. Stephen watched from afar, unsure how to act exactly. It was strange having someone there. Strange, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. Stephen's intention was clear. This would be just for one night, maybe two, until finding someone or a permanent solution. But days passed, and Stephanie stayed. She took up a corner on the couch, slept under an old blanket, and slowly became part of the house. One night, while Stephen was putting away tools in the shop, he heard crying from the house. He hurried inside and found Stephanie curled up in the corner of the living room. "What happened?" Stephen asked, kneeling beside her. I had a nightmare," Stephanie said, her voice choked. "Want to tell me about it?" he asked patiently. She shook her head, but after a few minutes started talking. They left me, again, alone, and there were people screaming, and I didn't know where to go." Stephen didn't ask who they were. He just pulled a blanket over her. "It's okay now. You're safe here." As the weeks went by, Stephen's routine changed. He started worrying about Stephanie's meals, making breakfast with a bit more care, making sure she had something to take in the makeshift lunchbox she used when she began attending the local school. The first times he tried to help her with schoolwork, Stephanie stayed silent, head down, scribbling on her papers with little attention. Stephen would gently insist, but always careful not to scare her. "If you want, I can help you with your homework," he said one afternoon, wiping his hands on a cloth. "No need," Stephanie replied, eyes fixed on her notebook. "Okay, but if you change your mind, just call me." Over time, she began accepting the help. Small victories Stephen quietly celebrated, but living together wasn't easy. Stephanie had sudden fits of anger. She slammed doors, shouted, and cried over things Stephen often didn't understand. "I don't need anyone," she yelled one night after an argument over a broken plate. "I know, but even so, I'm here," Stephen replied calmly. Other nights, she woke up screaming, eyes wide open, sweating cold. Stephen rushed to her makeshift room, trying to calm her. "It was just a bad dream, Stephanie. I'm here," he said, hugging her awkwardly but sincerely. Slowly, between cries, Stephanie began to share pieces of her past. Always broken sentences, long pauses, staring at a fixed spot on the wall. They did things with bad people. They screamed, fought, and left me alone for days, she said one night, eyes teary. "Who, Stephanie?" Stephen asked gently. "My parents, they left and never came back." Stephen listened without interrupting. He just absorbed every word. Despite the struggles, a new routine took shape. Stephen already recognized the soft sound of her footsteps around the house. He knew when she woke up, what she liked to eat, which shows she watched on TV. He took care of her meals, made sure she did her homework, and walked her to the door every morning. But the change in Stephen's life didn't go unnoticed by the neighborhood. The looks started to shift. Whispered conversations increased. The first direct confrontation came from Karen. She showed up one Saturday afternoon unannounced. She stopped at the shop's door, arms crossed, face stern. "Can we talk?" Karen said, in her usual sharp tone. Stephen put down his screwdriver on the workbench. "Go ahead." "I heard. You have a girl living here." "That's true." "This isn't right, Stephen. You don't have the capacity for this, neither emotionally nor financially." "She needed help. I gave it." "It's not like that. She needs a real family, with a mom and dad, someone prepared," Karen insisted. "She's safe now," he replied, looking firmly at her. Karen sighed, shaking her head. "You've always been stubborn, but now you're crossing the line." After that day, Karen started showing up more often, never with a kind word for Stephanie, only criticisms disguised as concern. "She's getting way too comfortable here. Don't you think that's dangerous?" Karen said during one visit. "Dangerous how?" Stephen asked, tired of his sister's tone. "You're a single man, raising a little girl. What will people think?" And people really did start talking. Michael, a neighbor who spent his days sitting on the sidewalk, became the main source of gossip. He talked to everyone. "It's strange, a single man, with a little girl inside his house." Michael said to anyone who'd listen. Stephen tried to ignore it, but gradually things became unbearable. At the market, he felt the sideways glances. At the shop, some customers began asking veiled questions. "Is she family?" one customer asked, feigning casual curiosity. "She's a girl I'm helping," Stephen answered without details. Things got worse when the social worker visits began. Nancy was a woman with a hard gaze and rigid posture. The first time she knocked on the door, Stephen knew it would be tough dealing with her. "Good afternoon. I'm Nancy from Social Services. We came to investigate some reports," she said bluntly. "Reports?" Stephen asked, surprised. "We received anonymous calls. Concerns about the girl situation." Nancy entered the house, looking around as if searching for proof of mistreatment. She asked about food, school, medical care. "Does she have psychological support?" Nancy asked, flipping through her notebook. "She's fine. Eating, studying. I'm taking care of her as best I can," Stephen replied. Nancy wrote everything down, but her look made it clear she wasn't convinced. The visits became frequent. Over time, Stephanie started hiding whenever she saw Nancy approaching. "I don't like her. She looks at me like I'm a problem," Stephanie said one afternoon while putting away school books. "I know, but it's better to cooperate," Stephen said, trying to ease the tension. The months passed under that constant pressure, but the weight of the routine, the constant worry, and sleepless nights began to take their toll. Stephen wasn't the same man he used to be. His body sent signals he stubbornly ignored. Dizziness came quietly, showing up at the end of a long workday when he bent down for a tool or got up too fast from the chair. Then, fatigue followed, a strange tiredness that didn't go away even after hours of sleep. "I'm fine, just a little tired," Stephen muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his forehead as he finished another job at the shop. Stephanie, innocent as a child, noticed some changes. "Why have you been so tired lately?" she asked one afternoon, helping organize tools. "Just a lot of work, Stephanie. That's all," Stephen replied, forcing a smile to hide it. But his body didn't lie. There were days his fingers trembled holding a wrench, mornings when he could barely get out of bed after much effort. Still, he kept going, as he always had his whole life, worked to his physical limit, refusing to stop. He didn't want to worry Stephanie, didn't want to give neighborhood or Karen any more reasons to question him. Until, one Friday afternoon, the inevitable happened. Stephen was in the middle of a repair under a car when everything around him started spinning. Cold sweat ran down his back. He tried to lean on the side of the vehicle, but before he could react, the floor came up to meet him. It was Mark, his oldest customer and longtime friend, who found him. "Stephen, hey, can you hear me?" Mark shouted, kneeling beside him, shaking him gently. Stephen opened his eyes with difficulty. I'm okay. Just a little dizzy," he muttered, trying to get up. "No way! You're going to the hospital now," Mark said firmly, not giving him a chance to refuse. At the hospital, the diagnosis was clear and direct: severe hypertension. "If you keep going like this, you could have a heart attack any time," the doctor said, looking at Stephen seriously. Even after the scare, Stephen only thought of one thing. "And Stephanie? Who's with her now?" he asked, still lying on the stretcher. "I asked a neighbor to keep an eye on her. But you need to take care of yourself, Stephen," Mark replied. While recovering, Stephen started to understand he couldn't keep carrying everything alone like that. But the fear of losing Stephanie was greater than any concern for his own health. Not long after being discharged, Nancy showed up at the shop. She came more and more with that cold tone, always with a clipboard in hand. "I need to talk to you, Stephen," Nancy said, face stern. "Go ahead," he said, wiping grease off his hands with a dirty rag. "The reports continue, and your health condition is now part of the file. You'll need to formalize Stephanie's custody as soon as possible. The adoption process has to start officially." Stephen stayed silent for a few seconds. I'd thought about it, but now... Feels like they're forcing me, right? He said, resigned. It's not about forcing, it's about ensuring the girl's legal safety, Nancy replied, without showing any empathy. From that moment on, the adoption process began. Stephen had to attend preliminary hearings, fill out endless forms, and endure even more frequent visits from social workers. It was during this time that a new character appeared in the story. Barbara, Stephanie's maternal grandmother. The first time Stephen heard her name was during a conversation with Nancy. "There's a new person interested in the girl's custody," Nancy said in her usual bureaucratic tone. "Who?" Stephen asked, eyes widening. "The maternal grandmother, Barbara." Stephen was silent. He had never heard Stephanie mention this woman. A few days later, Barbara showed up at the shop unannounced. A woman with a worn appearance, calculating eyes, and a hoarse voice. "So, you're the Stephen I've heard about?" Barbara said, crossing her arms. "Who are you?" he asked, already sensing trouble. "I'm Stephanie's grandmother, and I want custody. She has my blood. You have nothing to do with that girl. You never showed up before, never looked for her. Why now?" Stephen asked, eyes hard. "My business. Just know I'll do whatever it takes to get my granddaughter back." Barbara's motivation wasn't a mystery for long. Stephen learned, through gossip between neighbors, that she had found out the state offered financial benefits to families who took in children at risk. News of the custody battle quickly spread through the neighborhood. Karen, of course, took Barbara's side. "She's family by blood, has more right than you," Karen said during one visit. "She never cared about Stephanie, Karen. Never," Stephen responded firmly. "And you don't have the capacity for this either. Look at yourself. A barely standing," Karen shot back, pointing at him. Tension grew every day, and the moment everyone feared arrived, the hearing day, the courtroom was packed. Stephen entered with hunched shoulders, worn down by exhaustion, but with a firm gaze, determined not to give up. On one side, Karen and Barbara sat close, exchanging disapproving looks. On the other, Stephen, alone, hands sweaty, taking deep breaths to keep calm. When the judge entered, silence fell immediately. "Are all parties present?" the judge asked, voice deep. "Yes, Your Honor," Nancy replied, already ready to present her report. The accusations against Stephen came hard. Karen spoke first. "My brother is a sick, unstable man, unfit to raise a child. He's always been a loner, closed off, emotionally incapable." Then it was Michael's turn. "I've lived on this street for years, and I always found it strange. A single man raising a little girl. You know how it is," Michael said with a malicious tone. The judge interrupted him. "We are talking about concrete facts, Mr. Michael. Insinuations are not evidence." Nancy presented her report. Although she found no signs of abuse, the document carried a clear tone of distrust. "The environment is limited, and the risks of adoption by a single man are undeniable," Nancy said. Stephen took a deep breath with every word, tried to stay calm. When the judge called Stephanie to speak, the mood in the room shifted. She walked to the center of the room, small but determined steps, climbed the stand, sat down, and looked straight at the judge. "I want to say everything. May I?" Stephanie asked, her voice steady. "The court is listening, Stephanie," the judge replied. She began by talking about the nights of fear. "He stayed awake when I was scared, sat by my side until I fell asleep." Then she spoke about hunger. "There were days he didn't eat, just so I could take food to school." She looked at Michael with courage. "That man, the neighbor, he lies. He never saw anything wrong. He just talks because he doesn't like my dad, Stephen." It was the first time Stephanie called him Dad. Stephen was surprised, lowered his eyes for a moment, trying to hold back emotion. Stephanie turned to the judge again. "My grandmother. I don't even know her. The only time I saw her, She was with my parents. They yelled, fought, were gone for days, left strange people with me. I was scared, very scared. Her voice faltered for a moment but soon recovered. I don't want to go back to anyone in that family. If I can't stay with my dad, Stephen, I'd rather go back to the street. I want to be his daughter. He's my real dad. The silence that filled the room was heavy. Even the judge, known for being strict, lowered his eyes for a second. The decision came soon after. The court grants custody to Mr. Stephen, recognizing the emotional bond and clear protection he offers the minor. Reactions were immediate. Karen stood up, grabbed her bag, and left the room without looking back. Barbara also disappeared, vanishing from their lives as suddenly as she had appeared. Michael, embarrassed, avoided even crossing paths with Stephen on the street. Nancy was transferred to another region and never returned. Stephen, despite his health limitations, stayed at the shop. He slowed down, began serving only old customers he trusted, took small breaks during the day, took his medication, and forced himself to take care of his own health. Stephanie went back to studying with full strength and after years enrolled in law school. I want to help kids who go through what I went through, she said one afternoon while helping Stephen organize the shop's paperwork. Mark stayed by their side, helped with shop tasks, accompanied Stephen to medical appointments, made a point of being present. Over time, Stephen's house, once silent and empty, came alive. Sunday mornings smelled of food made together, laughter echoed through the rooms, and the walls, once mute, now held stories of overcoming. Stephen grew old with the certainty he had made the right choice, and Stephanie, with the maturity life demanded from her early on, carried in every decision the mark of the man who never needed to be her biological father, to truly be her dad. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.